And we are live from the wonderful Sports Link studio in Muncie, Indiana. This is the HB Toss made possible by the creative storytellers of Ball State Sports Link. I'm your host, AJ Swiatek, joined by my partner in crime, Sam Neiger. And I'll tell you what, it's been quite the ride. We appreciate everyone sticking with us for the entirety of the season. But Sam, it's the week we've all been waiting for. Super Bowl Sunday just around the corner.
Absolutely. It's all culminated into this. So happy you would have me back on the toss ahead of such a pivotal week and a great matchup on tap for us as well.
Certainly will. We won't waste any other time. We'll get right into it. Let's start by comparing the head coaches on both sides. We're going to do a deep dive into this matchup, do the Super Bowl some justice. Both these teams well fought, hard games to get here all the way through the playoffs, through the regular season. We'll start with the head coaches, though. For the Chiefs, Andy Reid. It's his 10th year as a head coach. He coached the Chiefs to that Super Bowl back in 2020. I mean, he's no stranger to success. He is a dominant force in this league, and he is a big reason the Chiefs are on this stage right now.
I couldn't agree more, AJ. And this game has actually already been coined the Andy Reid Bowl. He's been head coach of both the Eagles and the Chiefs. Of course, with the Chiefs, he has his lone Super Bowl victory. Certainly been in this position before. Very experienced guy. He trusts his players out there on the field, and he's got Patrick Mahomes, which is a big plus as well. But I mean, he's really a force in the locker room, a big leader, and as you said, powerhouse in this league, a coach that lots of guys like to model their game after.
Definitely, just an offensive mastermind. I like that you mentioned Mahomes because I think a lot of his success in the league can be credited to Andy Reid. He got a lot of question marks for sitting him on the bench to start his career behind Alex Smith, and now I don't think anyone's questioning that decision.
No, Andy Reid knows what he's talking about. It's a method to his madness, really, and although Alex Smith had some question marks too, for Patrick Mahomes to be able to sit back and watch a veteran guy work like that, it's done wonders for his game, and we've seen it turn into MVPs now.
Well, while we talk about great offensive minds, Nick Sirianni, only his second year as the Eagles head coach, but I don't think it could be understated how great of a job he has done with Jalen Hurts, taking a second-round pick out of Oklahoma who was viewed as a developmental guy and having him finish second in the MVP race.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful transition for the Eagles into the Nick Sirianni era. He's another offensive mastermind, a young guy, kind of like from the school of Sean McVay, these young, really intelligent guys that trust their quarterbacks. He's gelled so well with Jalen Hurts. It's been a fun little tandem to watch all season long, and I think we only have years to come of more exciting offense from the Eagles.
Yeah, well, I'm willing to admit I was one of the guys who was scratching my head when I saw Doug Peterson get fired, and great to see what he's doing over in Jacksonville. But again, I don't think anyone will question that decision at this point. Sirianni, a really good head coach. I still think I'm going to give the edge here to the Chiefs with Andy Reid with that experience. You mentioned it. He's been here before, but I mean, these are two of the top pivotal head coaches in the league right now.
It's really a toss-up, as is much of this matchup as a whole, but I'm going to go ahead and go with you as well. I'm going to take Reid as the better of the two head coaches, but I think in a couple of years, Sirianni could definitely be in that conversation if he's able to get back to this level and play at the Super Bowl again.
So we'll bode with experience in terms of the head coaches. Moving to the quarterbacks, two guys on the younger end of the spectrum, but two guys who had a lot of success. This is the MVP and the MVP runner-up. We'll talk about Patrick Mahomes first. Just crowned the league MVP. He won the Super Bowl back in 2020, and I mean, it's just, we've grown so accustomed to this, that people are taking this greatness for granted. He's had 5,771 yards this season, 45 touchdowns to a mere 12 interceptions. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, he is that guy. He is the number one quarterback in the NFL, and he led the Chiefs here, really a lot of it on his back.
Yeah, the numbers are staggering, and even though Patrick Mahomes lost a lot of weapons over this past season, he has been as spectacular as ever. And if you ask Tony Romo, he's by far the best player in the league. But Patrick Mahomes has the ability to work outside the pocket, make plays happen when things start to fall apart on offense, and it's his ability to see the field with a high football IQ in tough situations like that makes him such a great quarterback, and I think well deserving of the MVP.
I mean, I don't think we've ever seen talent like this in the NFL just from a sheer arm perspective, but I like that you talked about that mental processor. It doesn't get talked about enough because Patrick Mahomes is really in a conversation of his own in that downright too. I mean, he really goes through 5 reads progressions. He's able to extend time in the pocket. I mean, it's unbelievable what he's able to do, but we got to give credit where it's due on the other side as well. Jalen Hurts, a guy who a lot of people had major question marks going into the season. They acquire A.J. Brown. We'll get to him in a little bit, but the Eagles have looked like a completely different team, and Jalen Hurts has looked like a completely different quarterback.
Jalen Hurts has kind of been the crux of this offense really all season long. Like you said, had some question marks coming into the season, but he has more than exceeded the expectations that were set out for him. In my mind, he was the MVP. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is a spectacular player. I know you don't necessarily agree with me, but I really like Hurts, and I think in terms of this actual matchup that we're going to see on Sunday, Hurts has the ability to go tit for tat with Mahomes. He's a dual threat guy, not afraid to use his legs. He's a big guy as well, and I think he's willing to pound that Chiefs defense.
I was hoping you weren't going to bring up the Jalen Hurts MVP debacle because I'm going to have to put that to rest. I mean, he's behind Mahomes in just about every statistical category with the likes of A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders. We'll get to the weapons in just a second, but that is not to discredit what Jalen Hurts did this season because he is a top 5 passer in the game right now, and that's not even talking about his legs. I'm still going to give the edge to Patrick Mahomes because at the end of the day, Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. He is on a different planet. I don't think we will ever see another quarterback like this graze this earth, to be quite honest with you. But right now, I'm going to give the edge to Mahomes, but it's not to discredit Hurts.
I'm actually going to agree with you again with Mahomes, but it's for a different reason. Much like when we talked about Andy Reid, it was the experience. Patrick Mahomes knows how to win in big situations. I think this game has shootout written all over it, and it might very well come down to who has the ball last. I'm going to trust Patrick Mahomes with the ball last over Jalen Hurts just because he's been in situations like these before, and I think if it comes down to it, Patrick Mahomes, with the game on his shoulders, has the ability to win this game single-handedly, whereas Jalen Hurts might not.
So the Chiefs take the first 2 categories, but I don't think it's going to be any question who's got the better weapons. We'll start with Kansas City, one of the best tight ends we've ever seen play the game in Travis Kelce. But outside of that, we go to Isaiah Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Kadarius Toney, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Sky Moore. I mean, that's a lackluster group for a Super Bowl team, and I think that really speaks to what Mahomes and Reid have been able to do. But this Chiefs weapon cast, I really don't think many people are going to defend as a top unit in this league.
I wouldn't defend it either, but I do think credit needs to be given to Travis Kelce. He has been one of the best, if not the best, tight end in the league for quite a few years now, and he has been Patrick Mahomes' top target. He's really revolutionized the tight end position. We're seeing guys like him start to really make a big impact on the league. I think about guys like George Kittle, like T.J. Hawkinson, really making the tight ends a focal point of the offense, and I think defenses haven't necessarily figured out how to cover the tight end position like this, especially guys that are so athletic like Kelce. Kelce's a guy that can really put the offense on his back as well, and I think the Mahomes to Kelce combination is really dangerous and can really give a great defense like the Eagles some fits.
He's just a really special player. I mean, he's got the traits of a wide receiver with the frame of a tight end. It's not something that you see every day, but honestly, on the other side of the ball, as we look at the Eagles' weapons, I think Dallas Goedert has a case to be one of the better tight ends in the game right now, too. And you couple that with A.J. Brown, a clear wide receiver 1, Devonta Smith, a top 12 pick just a couple of years ago, and then a really stout backfield that's come into its own here deep into the postseason with Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell. And I think this Eagles weapon group, it's really up there with the best in the league.
Certainly, and it's a much more composed group altogether compared to the Chiefs. I mean, they've got more traditional offensive schemes in terms of the top targets are going to be the wide receivers in A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, but I really like that you brought up Goddard because he is an underrated tight end in this league and should be considered in that conversation. I think he's another guy that's really tough to cover, especially if they line a linebacker up against him to cover him, so he could certainly be an option in this game as well, but just a more balanced offense for the Eagles, and you add in the legs of Jalen Hurts, and this offense can attack you in so many different ways, and Nick Sirianni is the guy who's going to be able to unlock the potential that the Eagles need to win this game with this core.
Well, the Eagles front office, they've done a really good job building around Jalen Hurts because it feels like he's got a guy for every situation. A.J. Brown is there in the red zone. Devonta Smith, more of a burner deep. He's also a great route runner. And then Dallas Goedert is one of the better safety blankets in this league. In my opinion, this isn't particularly close. I'm going to take the Eagles' weapons by a landslide here.
I'm going to do the same as you, AJ. Again, that's 3 for 3 now for both of us, but it's really no comparison between these two units.
All right, now we'll move to the trenches. What a lot of people want to say really will decide this game, and really, these are two of the better units in the league, both offensively and defensively. We could start with an offensive line comparison, Sam. The Eagles' O-line, I don't think it's up for debate. They are the best unit in the league. They started the season ranked number 1 in the preseason by PFF. They've been there the entirety of the way. They have not taken their foot off the gas all 18 weeks through the Super Bowl. The Eagles have been ranked number 1 in every statistical category on their offensive line by Pro Football Focus, and it's for good reason. I mean, Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, Jason Kelce, this is a scary offensive line.
And I think for other teams watching this Super Bowl, they really need to focus on the Chiefs' offensive line and what they've been able to build there with guys like Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith really making the offensive line a focal point of the team. We mentioned that the Chiefs don't have the weapons to match the Eagles, but what makes them a serious contender in this game is because Patrick Mahomes, already one of the most prolific quarterbacks in the league, if not the most prolific, is going to have all day to throw. I know the Eagles have a spectacular defense, but Patrick Mahomes doesn't need a lot of time to make things happen. And even if the pocket does break down, he's able to get outside. His offensive line does secondary blocks for him, giving him as much time as possible. I think they're a key in this game, and I really do think that they could be the key to the Chiefs' offense really coming up with some big plays.
Two really big offensive line units. That Chiefs one ranks number 4 by PFF headed into the Super Bowl. I like that you mentioned the two youngins. Also got Joe Tooney there on the interior. I mean, that Chiefs offensive line, it's really special, but I mean, the Eagles' defensive line, they have not had a problem with an offensive line all season long. I mean, they have 78 sacks so far this season, but if the Chiefs do want to get something done, the Eagles are still allowing 4.6 yards per carry. So the Chiefs, not a team you're used to seeing run the football, but I expect Andy Reid to try to get that into the playbook early into the Super Bowl.
That being said, I do think the Eagles are a bend-don't-break type of defense. They're recognized as one of the best defenses in the league, but they do struggle against the run sometimes, and they give up some bigger plays. But at the end of the day, they're going to make the stops when the stops count. And I know the old adage is a little cliche. Offense wins games, defense wins championships. But if this team is going to win a championship, they're going to need to make some pivotal stops against a great offense and a great offensive line.
And both teams just have some really big pieces up front. We look at the Eagles with all those guys in double-digit sacks. I believe it's Hassan Reddick, Javon Hargrave, Brandon Graham, and Josh Sweat, all breaking double-digit sacks before the postseason even started. I mean, this is a historic unit. So I think I'm going to have to give both sides of the trenches the nod to Philly, and this is where it starts to get really interesting because it comes down to what you value, because now we talk about weapons and trenches going to Philly, but maybe the two most important things in the game, the quarterback and the head coach, going to Kansas City.
It's such an interesting dynamic, and it's what makes this game so exciting. I know a lot of people are accustomed to these two teams being in winning positions at this point in the season, but what makes this matchup so interesting in particular compared to seasons past is because these teams are not perfect. I mean, they've got a young coach for the Eagles, 2 young quarterbacks. There's more experience with the Chiefs in terms of winning the Super Bowl more recently, but the Eagles are so solid in the trenches, so solid on defense, so many different avenues that you can take when trying to factor in who you think is going to win this game, but it certainly makes for an exciting matchup to watch.
I think that's what makes this so exciting, Sam, is like this postseason, it feels like every game has been 50-50 heading into it. No one really know who they were going to ride with to the end, and eventually, you know, it does end up being the 2 one-seeded teams, the 2 teams that ended up with that bye. So I think it goes to show that regular season performance, it really did take off a big bite of what these teams were able to complete.
Absolutely. I think the fact that these 2-1 teams were able to make it to the Super Bowl as well, whereas in years past it hasn't been the case, it's a testament to what these head coaches have done especially. I mean, and there's just 2 completely different ways of approaching the game right now. The Chiefs, they're very disciplined. Andy Reid runs a tight ship, and Nick Sirianni's just getting his feet wet in the head coaching position, but he's really driven the ship with a lot of young guys, and I think this could be a matchup we could see for years to come in winning positions. Whether or not we ever see this Super Bowl matchup again is up for grabs, but I think we're in for a really good one.
All right, well, let's look at the last asset of the team, but we don't want to have to overlook it. The secondaries, both of these teams have had different looks on the back end this season, but I think it goes without saying that this Eagles unit, it's been one of, if not the best in the league. I mean, you see Darius Slay, James Bradbury. I mean, it's just unbelievable what they have been able to put together. The Eagles feel like they're making all the right moves at all the right times. And, you know, all the players, everyone gets the ring, but you've got to really give credit to the personnel in the front office because what Philly has turned over in one offseason is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I think one of the best signings of the offseason was bringing in James Bradbury. It was kind of a question mark as to who was going to line up out opposite of Darius Slay, and Bradbury has been a great addition to this Eagles unit, and it really completes the defense. A lot of times teams have great pass rush but can't back it up in the secondary. The Eagles are not the case. They are sound all the way around, and it makes them a really threatening unit, even to a guy like Patrick Mahomes.
And that's where my big question mark of this entire game comes in, because I think that this right here is what's going to decide the game. The Chiefs secondary, it is probably the weakest unit of anything we've talked about so far. They have had new guys in new positions all season long. It's a very young unit that's going to have to step up to the big stage and guard the likes of A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. I mean, if they're able to do it, then Patrick Mahomes and company are going to be able to get it done. It's just a matter of if you think that's possible, because I think it goes without saying the Eagles secondary, it's miles ahead of the Chiefs, but this unit has held its own this postseason, and they have been able to get it done when it matters most.
They have. They've adjusted well to the pressure despite being a young unit, but we know Patrick Mahomes is going to score the football. It's whether Jalen Hurts is able to match him with that Eagles offense, and I think you have to attack the weak link of the Chiefs defense, which is that secondary, and I think Jalen Hurts knows how to throw the ball around with a lot of accuracy and with a lot of power, and I think they could break the Chiefs defense open for some big plays. They can score fast, gain some chunk yardage quickly, and maybe start to let this win slip away from the Chiefs if it gets to that position.
Well, Sam, we looked at the rosters up and down. We looked at the head coaching comparisons. Without further ado, we'll get into the picks. I'll let you go first. Do you like Philly or Kansas City in the big dance?
I'm riding with the Philadelphia Eagles in this game. I think we're in for a spectacular matchup. This is going to be a classic. It has it written all over it. I mean, 2 1 seeds, obviously 2 of the best teams in football right now. There's been no debate really about that all season long. I think it's going to come down to the trenches and the defense. I think the Eagles defense is such a sound unit. I think the offensive line is going to give Jalen Hurts all day to throw. I mean, both of these offenses are going to score. They're so prolific. Really, at the end of the day, it's just going to be 1 or 2 crucial stops that the defenses are going to have to make. And to be honest with you, I trust the Eagles defense to make those stops more than I trust the Chiefs. So I'm going to ride with the Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly.
I like it, Sam. Let's finish the season on an agreeing note, because I'm also going to like the Eagles here. And I like what you mentioned. These are the 2 best teams in the NFL. So it really can go either way. I think the line's set at about 1.5, maybe sprinkle that. But I really, really like what I've seen from Philadelphia this season. And, you know, it's hard to pick against Patrick Mahomes at any time, but when the Eagles just have such a complete roster, it feels like the writing's on the wall. It's going to be Philadelphia's year, and now I'm just looking forward to seeing what color the Gatorade is that's dumped on Nick Sirianni and company.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fun to watch this celebration. Always fun when Philadelphia teams are successful. Those fans get rowdy for sure, but the Chiefs are definitely going to hold their own. This really is a toss-up to end the year. I know you said the line is at 1.5, but either way, I think we're in for just a great matchup.
We're in for a good one, as we always are. We appreciate you guys coming along for the ride this season. But before we go, we have a quick announcement. We're going to be covering the NFL Draft on the HB Toss. Look out for some episodes coming on our big boards, and we'll be live for the entirety of the first round, breaking down every pick. So we won't go anywhere this offseason. But in the meantime, we hope you have a great Super Bowl Sunday. I'm AJ Swiatek. That's Sam Neiger. The HB Toss is signing off.